Welcome to ATCM, the Emergency Medicine channel. Today we are going to discuss about an elderly female who came to the ER with an unresponsive state. A 70-year-old female patient was brought to ER. She was found unresponsive on the floor of her room 1 hour back. Initial 10-second assessment, we first checked the central pulse, it was present and she was taking spontaneous breath. And we took a GRBS which was 102 milligram per deciliter. Then we go ahead with the primary survey. Okay. In the primary survey, airway there was gurgling sounds was present and we suctioned that and she was having snoring also. So jaw thrust was given and she had a small abrasion of the nose. So we don't know whether it is trauma related or not. So we placed a C collar. We didn't attempt for a nasal airway because of suspecting a trauma, and since she had persisting gurgling sounds and since her airway was not patent, we planned for an RSA for that patient.
Okay, so we have an unresponsive patient who doesn't know what is the history, so we went ahead with the BLS protocol. We went ahead and checked her pulse was there, and on assessment of the airway patency was not there. So why didn't you do a nasal airway?
Because she had an abrasion over the nose and she was found unresponsive. We don't know whether some trauma or some assault or something happened at home. So we don't know whether there is some base of skull fracture or anything or IC bleed. What was the event, we were not sure. That's why we didn't place.
Oral airway
Could be placed.
Because again, here the patient don't have any gag reflex, yes, whatever the history you are giving it. So initially to maintain the airway, you can do a suctioning, and maybe to prevent tongue fallback, you can think of that. But base of skull fracture, again, a nasal bone external injury is not one of the marker. You need to have at least some epistaxis or CSF rhinuria, battle sign or something. That should be the ideal thing. But still, anyway, you are planning to go ahead with the intubation. So there is no point in wasting by doing all these maneuvers. You can directly go ahead and intubate this patient. So before intubation, what all things you wanted to do for this patient? Anything specific that you wanted to do?
We have to rule out hypoglycemia.
Okay, is that done? GRBS was above 100.
While we are arranging for intubation, we will have to quickly go to the other breathing circulation part also.
Okay.
So in the breathing, her respiratory rate was 14 per minute. Air entry was bilaterally equal and there was no added sound. And saturation, she was maintaining 93% in room air. And chest exertions were also normal. We took an ABG that time. That time the pH was 7.230. PCO2 of 60.6, bicarbonate of 24, PO2 of 81 and SO2 of 88.
Okay, so was going for an impending respiratory arrest, failure and arrest. So
and lactate was 2.8 that.
Okay.
Then circulation, her heart rate was 86 per minute, blood pressure was 80/50 with a map of 60. We placed 2 large bore IV cannula. We quickly assessed the IVC. IVC was 0.9 centimeter collapsed and LV contractility was good and there was no features of cardiac tamponade or anything. So we gave her 2-pint normal saline bolus was given. We connected her to cardiac monitor and 12D ECG was also taken.
Okay.
And ECG was showing normal sinus rhythm.
Okay.
And disability part, her GCS was E1, V1, M1 and pupils were 2.5 millimeter reacting to light. And GRBS we ruled out hypoglycemia and temperature was 98 degree Fahrenheit.
Okay. So from this history, what will you suspect from this history? Whatever available examination findings, somebody unresponsive, somebody have brought unresponsive and he's having hypotension,
yes,
and bilaterally pupils were reacting to right and sensorium was on the lower side, GCS was also on the lower side. So what are the possibilities that you will consider at this point?
So she positive findings are low GCS and hypotension. So hypotension itself can produce a low GCS, or since she is an elderly female, we have to suspect some cardiac event or something that have triggered this. Anyway, but we did ECG and ruled out that. Then there can be a sepsis, septic shock. That also.
So how was the event? It was a drastic one, or it was slowly, gradually progressing one?
Nobody actually saw what happened to her.
No, so that means she was quite stable before that.
In the morning, but towards
some acute event has happened. Maybe in the last 6 to 8 hours, some acute event has happened. Yes. So some acute event, it can be from the whatever the history, it can be one of the thing will be an cerebrovascular
Vascular
accident.
accident.
But one thing that is against cerebrovascular accident, usually you will have that hypertension. But here having hypotension. That is one thing. But we don't know whether it is a large IC bleed, whether she has gone for an coning, and because of that there is a hypotension. But bradycardia?
Heart rate was 86.
86. There was no bradycardia. So we don't know exactly what is happening. So these are the differentials that we can keep in our mind. The next thing can be an electrolyte disturbance, but again an electrolyte disturbance, suddenly it will not worsen like this. Hypoglycemia is one of the closest differential that we need to consider. Another one can be a seizure, post-ictal phase.
Non-convulsive status.
Non-convulsive status can be another possibility. So from this history, these are the different possibility, and these things, like, we have to keep all other differentials also in our mind.
And toxicology also.
Toxicological causes also we need to definitely think, because usually when you getting a patient that doesn't fit into any of these things, definitely consider toxicological causes. Any drug overdose can present. If you think like any drug overdose, which are the common drugs, benzodiazepines, again they can have CNS depression and they can produce hypotension also. So that is one agent that we need to remember.
Then barbiturates.
Barbiturates, again comatose, they can present with coma. But what was the pupillary sites?
Pupil was 2.5 millimeter reactive.
What will usually happen in barbiturates? It will be more into a meiosis sort of thing. The 2.5 millimeter, we don't know whether it can be multiple agent. Maybe a barbiturate with an antidepressant with a benzodiazepine. It can be a combination of alcohol. All those things can be there. Fine.
So
what you have done for hypotension?
So we have given her 2 pine NS bolus was given, and we reassessed the blood pressure that it was 90/60. So by the time we arranged for the rapid sequence intubation, and we have prepared the scope, the 7 and 7.5 size tube, and we have arranged for suction and Yango suctions, drugs, ETCO2, ventilators, syringes, and cardiac monitors were already arranged.
Anything else that you wanted to do before giving your drugs?
We can take for toxicology samplings can be done.
Ideally, at least blood sample we can take and keep it ready. Other samples, let it be fine, but blood sample, once you are giving all these agents, blood sample, urine possible, but minimum you can take a blood sample and send it for toxicological analysis.
She was pre-oxygenated with NRBM, and pre-treatment we have given her short dose of fentanyl only because of hypotension. And the agent which we took was etomidate, but ideally I think rocuronium, ketamine.
Ketamine can be tried, but ketamine we didn't try because what would be the reason? We don't know exactly what is happening. Still, we can give ketamine. There is no harm in giving ketamine here because there is hypotension. You doesn't know there is no tachycardia. So you said it is good LV. Ketamine can be a choice of ideal agent of choice, but etomidate also is fine.
And she was paralyzed with rocuronium, and she was intubated with inline stabilization of the C-spines. And she was connected to the ventilator. So her airway was secured with 7.5 size CT tube, and angle of mouth was 21, and she was connected to a ventilator, so her breathing was controlled by the ventilator, and she was maintaining 100% with 50% FiO2. Her heart rate when we reassessed was 98 per minute, and blood pressure was 128 over 70, and we took samples for blood and urine for toxicology, and after we were planning on a neuroimaging also, so after that we can place an RT and take the gastric sample. Okay. So after that we connected her to ETCO2 monitoring, then chest x-ray was taken and ET tube was confirmed. Then we did a CT brain plane which was not showing any IC bleed.
Simultaneously all other investigation would have gone for your electrolytes and all. So electrolytes and all was normal.
Yes, in our ABG itself electrolyte was showing sodium of 138. So that time itself we...
What was the counts, blood counts?
Blood counts, her total count was 6,000 range, and platelet was 3,28,000, and hemoglobin was 12.8, CRP was 2.3.
Okay, so it's unlikely to be a septic event. Yes. It can be either a metabolic or a cerebrovascular event, or it may be a toxicological agent that she has consumed and she has come to us. So we have narrowed down our differentials. So these are the three differential. We have ruled out possibility of an infective etiology. Probably it will be a metabolic event that has happened, or versus a toxicological or a cerebrovascular accident. Again, cerebrovascular accident unlikely to be a cerebrovascular accident because of the clinical presentation. Fine.
Ample history, there is no allergies. Patient is a case of moderate depression on clonazepam 0.25 mg at night and mirtazapine. She is having dyslipidemia and hypertension, and she is taking atorvastatin, clopidogrel and telmisartan.
Depression, you are saying depression and the patient is on a benzodiazepine.
Yes.
So how does that correlate? Because what actually, maybe an anxiety disorder or maybe an insomnia, we can prescribe benzodiazepine. For depression as such, it won't have much of an antidepressant effect. For classical treatment of depression, you need either a TCA or SSRI or a newer agents, newer antipsychotics. You have to try or newer antidepressants. But ideally, benzodiazepine you can give for insomnia, anxiety disorder and insomnia. That will be the ideal way. Clonazepam are all using for basically for our insomnia. So that will be the reason.
Last meal was not known. Patient was doing her routine activities at home. She was last seen normal that day morning, and towards 4 p.m. her grandchildren noticed her unresponsive on the floor of her house with some abrasion over the nose, and that time itself they brought her here. Since we didn't get the exact history, we asked the bystanders to check for any empty strips and all. That time they noticed 7 tablets of clonazepam were missing, and they also noticed that there was a bottle of alcohol which was empty. We don't know whether the patient took that or not.
So this is what is the history. So we got a history now. Right now a patient had consumed maybe 7 tablets of 0.5 mg. 0.25 mg of clonazepam, and she has come with low GCS to us, and maybe we are not sure whether she has consumed anything else. This is the only history that we got. Okay.
So we went ahead with the systemic examinations. Other than the low sensorium, we didn't get any other findings.
Positive findings.
Yes.
So my the question here is that you have got a patient with a respiratory depression with history of benzodiazepine overdose. Will you give flumazenil or not?
This patient we are suspecting co-ingestion with alcohol also, and she is on this tablet for a long time. So this patient we will not give flumazenil.
So where all flumazenil is indicated, where all flumazenil is contraindicated?
Contraindications of flumazenil are more, sir, because there is high risk of seizure and all. And so if a patient comes with benzodiazepine overdose and we are not very sure if it is benzodiazepine overdose, we are not supposed to give that. If there is associated co-ingestion, we are not supposed to give. If there is associated intake of tricyclic antidepressant, or if there is associated intake of any seizure triggering agent, we are not supposed to give. And if there is any probability of raised ICP or any past history of seizures, we are
avoiding flumazenil. Where you will give flumazenil then?
Acute overdose of benzodiazepine. Only benzodiazepine.
Okay, so how will you know that it is only benzodiazepine?
If in a like a ED setup, we are giving a procedure
okay.
or like some process like that, we are administering it, and in our
we know that this is due to this, and we have given only this drug, and we are very sure that it is due to this drug. You can give flumazenil. So what is the dose of flumazenil and how it is available?
Flumazenil we can give it as IV 0.2 milligram. We will be giving over 30 seconds, and we can repeat it every minute, and we can up to 1 milligram we will give, and after 20 minutes if the patient's symptoms is persisting, we can give the same doses up to 1 mg. In an hour maximum 3 milligram can be given.
The thing is that each vial of flumazenil is 5 ml, and 5 ml contains 0.5 mg. That is the one that you need to know. So 0.5 mg in 5 ml. Usually it is very rare. 1 mg, 1 ml is a usual combination. Here flumazenil will have 0.5 mg in 5 ml. So initial 0.2 you given. After that we can have a 0.3 additional in that vial. So you can give that 0.3 and look for the response. If still there is no response, maybe as you said, the maximum dose that can be repeated is up till 3 mg in an hour. That is the maximum. So if you want to give 3 mg, you need to use 6 vials of flumazenil. So that much of flumazenil will cost you approximately 12 to 15,000 rupees. 12,000 to 15,000 rupees. Previously it was not available, freely available, but now it is freely available in the Indian market. So flumazenil, it is reserved for the Definitely it is due to benzodiazepine. As you said, it is due to a procedural sedation. You are given something for like a bronchoscopy, you are given for a CT, patient is not agitated, and you are given it for a CT. That is the time when you give flumazenil. But routinely giving flumazenil for overdoses like for this patient is generally not indicated. If you are giving for this patient, there is a high potency that she can have a seizure, she can have withdrawal seizures, or there can be co-ingestion. So those part we were not definitely not using. We should not be using flumazenil. As you said, the contraindication is more than indication. So flumazenil is it's a very good drug, but can be reserved for certain agents when you are giving benzodiazepine for your procedural sedation. Reserve it for that, and unless and until you are very sure that when you are very sure, the patient need to tell you the answer that I have consumed only this. But for that reason, you need not give flumazenil. She is conscious oriented. No indication to give flumazenil. Okay.
And even after giving also, patient again can go into the same state.
Okay.
Then other things with when we did the toxicological analysis, this patient's blood, urine and gastric sample was positive for clonazepam and alcohol.
Okay. Clonazepam and alcohol. So she had consumed some amount of alcohol also. So amount of quantity we doesn't know. Usually alcohol they will recover by itself. Only if we are finding some ethanol content only they will have acidosis. Here acidosis was due to respiratory acidosis. Due to the impending respiratory failure. So that will be the reason. So routinely can tell.
In benzodiazepines and all, we can get respiratory acidosis because of respiratory depression. There can be metabolic acidosis if we are giving some IM or IV preparation of diazepam and lorazepam, because the diluent agent is a propylene glycol. That can produce some metabolic acidosis, nephrotoxicity and all. That can also be there.
Okay. So what is the usual toxicology testing that we need to know? Is the urine one is the most commonly done.
Yes.
And urine one, but here the gastric aspirate itself you have tested positive, but unless you can do an urine sample. So the common drug abuse panels you can send for like benzodiazepine, barbiturates and all those things you can send, and you can see whether it is a positive or not. So the take home message that you need to remember is that when you are having a benzodiazepine overdose, just the conservative management is more than enough. Here the patient was intubated and her airway part was taken care of, and once we are come to know that there is a co-ingestion, we didn't give flumazenil, we were just continuing with the conservative management. What happened to this patient later?
This patient was admitted to our ICU, and we were doing the necessary monitoring, and we started her on Augmentin. Since we confirmed it as a benzodiazepine overdose, we were monitoring the patient, and after around 24 hours after the event, she regained her consciousness.
Okay.
And so we were able to wean her off the ventilator, and we were able to extubate her.
Okay. What are the possible risk factors in benzodiazepine overdose? In this patient, like she's an elderly lady. So normally the routine clonazepam and all is a short acting agent. It's just for the night time, maybe 12 hours after that the patient should come out.
Half-life is around 18 to 50 hours.
18 to 15 hours is the maximum. It's not actually short acting, it's a long acting one. It is actually short acting is like midazolam. It's a long acting that we will give it for usually for insomnia. The problem is that the total accumulated dose can be there, and as a result of the patient's age, the elimination can take time. Yes. So the effect can be there for the next 3 to 4 days. Okay. So the problem that they have to anticipate is due to aspiration pneumonia and all. But here we have taken care of the airway, and that part is clear. So there should not be any other further problem. And Augmentin was started for prevention of aspiration pneumonia.
And benzodiazepines, usually in the liver, there will be an oxidation happening. So if this patient is having some liver disease or exposure to estrogens or ethanol and all, these things can increase the oxidation of the benzodiazepine. Prolonged action of benzodiazepine.
Especially she has consumed along with alcohol here.
In advanced stage also there will be prolonged action of benzodiazepine.
So majority of the poison, when you consider, only 5% of the poison will have an antidote available. So only 5% have an antidote, and the selection of antidote and selection of patient who needs an antidote should be done carefully. So when you have an antidote, flumazenil, that is sure it is for benzodiazepine, but not for all patients we will be using. So don't jump and start flumazenil for a patient. For an out of curiosity, you have just seen a patient with benzodiazepine overdose and you are very sure it's a benzodiazepine also. Don't just jump and give flumazenil, because it can cause more harm than benefit for the patient. Okay. Anything else?
No. Then after extubating, we have given her a psychiatric consultation, and they found that she is having severe depression, and she didn't have any alcohol withdrawal symptoms, and later she was transferred under psychiatry.
Okay. The issue here was that patient's husband was an oncology patient and she was totally depressed and she was not getting proper attention of her disease actually. So depression, somebody have wrongly prescribed her a benzodiazepine. So which she needs to be on some other agents which will improve her mood. So instead of that, somebody have given her drug for her insomnia only. That part has not been taken care of. So now any patients who is coming with an overdose, definitely we need to consult the psychiatrist and an opinion need to be taken to them because there can be further events that can happen. So we need to prevent that also. So we had given her a psychiatry consult and they took over her to their side and further treatment was done from them. Okay, fine. Thank you.